Mr. Mechanic, welcome back.
Hello. Hi, Luke. Telling my kids this was Luke Jr.
Thank you.
Yeah. It sort of is from a certain perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. Great to have you.
Great to have you back.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry if I'm a bit surly. I'm a bit jet lagged, you know.
Yeah.
And we're a bit tired, so this is going to be our best episode.
It'll be really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is going to be great.
All right. So I thought we'd start this by coming full circle to the thing that your wife asked me when we first met. She asked me at the Horsepower Ranch, which in Mexico.
Yeah.
The Baja, which is like the middle of nowhere, or the outskirts.
What's the edge of nowhere?
Yeah,
it's right next to the endless ocean.
Oh yeah. That's that.
Ensenada, right? Like just below Tijuana.
Yeah, and well, the ocean is actually nowhere, isn't it? So Hawaii would be in the middle of nowhere, and
yeah, I think so.
Anyway, the thing she asked me is a very simple question, which I've been trying to refine the answer to over the years after she first asked it, and it's the simple question: what is Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think it is whatever we make it. I think that's it. It changes, right? It's a set of rules that can change. It's a protocol, and that's so. My favorite analogy is always the language analogy, because language is a protocol that everyone will happily adopt and use and correct people if they use it wrong and update their own understanding of what the rules of the protocol are. So that totally applies to Bitcoin. So rules change over time. You know, it's a set of rules enforced by voluntary participants. That's what Bitcoin is. It's a protocol. It's a set of rules that is followed voluntarily by a bunch of people. That's all it is. Just a evolving set of rules.
It's close to my answers.
All right. I'm copying my homework.
I'm copying your homework. I usually answer it's an agreement on a fixed set of rules that are very hard to change. And the reason we agree on the rules is that they're more expensive to break than to follow.
Yeah.
Which creates, absolute finite number and not being able to copy and all of the other nice censorship resistant.
And no, because breaking the rules isn't the point is it's because you're not breaking the rules. I mean, the implication here is doing something like a 51% attack. That doesn't violate the protocol. It just violates the expectation of what other people think you might do. And especially in current scenario where Bitmain can 51% attack the network if they want at any minute. Importantly, that doesn't violate the protocol. If it did, we wouldn't have to worry about it, right?
Please explain that.
Bitmain make all the hardware and they run all the small pools and they run a big pool too. And if you add it all up, it's over 51% of pool dominance and it's over 80% of hardware dominance, which is all closed source and backdoored. And they just run that entire part of the ecosystem. Unfortunately, there's Bitcoiners and laser eyes and maxis and ideological Bitcoiners, and this is the world I've been in forever, and mining went off on its own tangent and it's basically just run by one Chinese company. And if you go and via BTC is an old partner of Bitmain, and you go on the CEO's Twitter page and it's just a Bitcoin cash flag, and these guys they would switch in 5 minutes to doing whatever gets them more fiat, right? It's the idea that there's somehow part of the ecosystem or that game theory will magically keep us all in alignment and it's all fine. I'm rambling already, but this is the analogy I came up with earlier. Someone was worried about something Bob Burnett said at the conference right here, and they went to their guru Michael Saylor and went, Bob Burnett's worried about centralization of template construction in mining. And apparently this is Chinese whispers here, but Saylor was like, well, don't worry about that, because if the centralized template constructors ever did anything bad, then all the miners would just switch, which is the old cope from 2015. And then the guy went back to Bob Burnett and went, yeah, okay, apparently that isn't a concern, Michael Saylor says, because all the miners will just switch, right? And I was like, this is my parallel for this is I'm trying to explain Bitcoiners to no-coiners as a monetary network, a medium of exchange, not a store of value. And they're like, why do I need this? I send my payroll, it all goes out over PayPal every month. What's the issue? Why do I need Bitcoin? And I'm like, well, because PayPal can deplatform you. They can cancel you. And they're like, oh, don't worry about that. If they ever did that, I would just use Venmo instead. I'm like, you do not understand what building a resilient system is, or like why you create redundancy and you court inefficiency just as a means of, I don't want one guy to do this thing. I want 8 million people to do this thing, even though 7,999,000 is all redundant. It just means governments can't stop it anymore, which is what the whole point of the thing is. That's it. So mining is centralized. At the end of the day, it's centralized and getting worse. And people are now resorting to cope. They're no longer interested in anti-fragility. They're just saying it doesn't matter because Bitcoin somehow will just work. It's literally just it is Bitcoin to no coiners. You're saying centralized payment networks are fine because if any one of them messes around, free market will fix it. I said that is not a reliable system for you to build an economy on.
Okay, well, what I'm thinking of is that famous Antonopoulos video where he explains the 51% attack, and he says that all they could do was one double spend, and then we'll kick the fuckers off the network. And so, what would happen if Bitmain actually pulled off a 51% attack? What do you see happening, like if they actually do that?
I think you'd see a disappointing and underwhelming reaction to it. At the moment, we're all boiling frogs. Everything's gone way over the limit of what should have been tolerable to Bitcoiners. And comparatively, we're just not anything like as vigilant as we used to be. Bitcoin was always going to be a victim of its own success. And it's now inundated and diluted with people that, even if they really care about it, they just don't understand it that well, and they don't know the history. So Ghash.io was a big pool, got too big, spooked the network, and everyone abandoned it, and it died. Bitmain is in that position now, and they have this silly game they play where they pretend to not be as big as they are via the use of proxy pools that make...
I see that, but if they actually pulled off the attack...
Yeah, I'm getting to that. I'm just saying, given that we're already past the point where they can, which was sufficient to cause alarm before, I don't somehow expect Bitcoiners to go, all right, that's too far, and all the frogs to jump out of the hot water because they actually did that. I know what Andreas was saying. He's saying, just an economically rational actor would never 51% attack if they were in a position to, because why would they undermine why would they bite the hand that feeds them? I get that, it's logical, but Bitcoin does not exist in its own game theoretical vacuum. Someone can come, I don't care what it is. If the CBDC people are like, right, we're pulling the trigger today, this is... If the Chinese government wants to come to Bitmain and say, right, you're doing this now, I'm not going to rely on Andreas's video saying, oh, don't worry, they won't do that. It's economically irrational. Like, they have a gun to their head, and Bitcoiners can either react strongly to it and do what they need to do, or they can cope and say, oh, it doesn't matter, someone else will include what are they doing with the 51% attack? Are they just mining empty blocks? Are they double spending? I would think it would probably be a censorship attack more than a reorganizing of the chain, which does undermine Bitcoin more. So the former, in a scenario where they do that, I think Bitcoiners would largely just stay boiling frogs in the pan and say, this sucks. And then the publicly traded miners that are mining with, they tend to be more North American based, so they all go to Foundry instead of Bitmain. Foundry will pick up some of the slack, but then it depends what's going on politically there. If someone's holding a gun to Foundry's head too and saying you need to censor, the idea that the riots and the not marathon because they're their own thing, the Hut 8s and the Bit Farms and the Clean Sparks and those publicly traded companies, the idea that they would just all switch pool, I don't know where they could even go, because the requirements that are placed on them to be allowed to be miners in a publicly traded capacity mean that they can't really move, and even if they could, they're not going anywhere quickly. So I think very quickly how it would actually play out is, assuming disaster scenario, you've got Foundry and you've got Bitmain like conducting a censorship attack. Those two alone are already around 50%, if you don't even include the proxy pools like Brains and all those guys that are really just ant pool at this point. if those guys are censoring and they're doing it according to some blacklist like OFAC compliance, something like that, most Bitcoiners are going to say, well, I'm not on that list, so, I'll carry on using it. The price might fall a bit. The price also might go up a lot, right? Like do you remember when Silk Road got shut down? The price, this was October 2013 or 2012, was it? I don't even remember, but the price went like, the market had a schizophrenic reaction to it. It went extremely far down because a lot of people thought like Silk Road is the killer use case for Bitcoin, right? And then it went all the way in the other direction, like it was two god candles, like in both directions. And everyone, because a lot of people just appreciated like the newfound legitimacy of Bitcoin. We've shaken off this nasty drug stuff, right? So if they're putting pools in a position, like the billionaires that are putting their company balance sheet on Bitcoin, are they going to care if there's a UTXO blacklist that's all these nasty drug dealers and Russian oligarchs? They might see it as a good thing. So just to round off the point, you're not going to see the publicly traded guys switch pool in that scenario. They might even welcome it. And even if they, with the best of intentions, wanted to switch, the regulators have got them by the balls and they can't. Like if I work for Ocean, if these publicly traded guys were like, this sucks, Foundry is censoring, we're going to switch to Ocean, they literally can't. In most contexts, they can't because we don't have the necessary, they want us to KYC all of our miners and we're not prepared to do stuff like that. That is prohibitive for them. So, I mean, in that scenario, I basically think this cope that Andreas has is just, it's no more than conjecture, and I don't think it's based on any sort of pragmatic understanding of what most Bitcoiners are these days. No one is going to dump their Bitcoin in that scenario that you might think, because what are they going to dump it for? Bitcoin is still going to be the best thing, even with centralized mining. This is what I mean with boiling frog syndrome.
All right, but this is the reason why I don't like the term circular economy, because as you say, nothing exists in a vacuum. Everyone's action influences everyone else's action, the Kevin Bacon numbers and whatnot. Like we're all connected in this. But to take it back to the MTGOX thing, I remember how I reacted to that when it happened. I mean, I wasn't deep into Bitcoin at all at the point, but I was very interested in what was going on. And to me, it was not that, okay, Bitcoin is legit because now the drug use narrative is gone. It was more like, okay, one large fucking entity went down and Bitcoin still works. Therefore, number went up again.
Yeah.
And that's like what I hope will happen now if there's like a 51%. Like, don't you think that kind of mindset is still there?
That's a very good point. That's one of my favorite things to sort of mention about like bad things happening and Bitcoin surviving them and thus becoming not theoretically anti-fragile, but in practice demonstrating its anti-fragile.
Wars is a perfect example.
Mt. Gox is a good example. Gavin Andresen is a good example. China mining bans are great examples. Like I use this frequently when I'm like, pontificating on this stuff, as I like to do. But I think when it comes to mining centralization, I don't think that applies, sadly. I don't think someone does a 51% attack. The community responds in an agile way that's commensurate and with the cypherpunk ethos, deals with it, roots around it, and we go, hey, we dealt with the theoretical 51% attack and proved that the practical response to it actually is something that we can expect to happen. No, I think we'd be very disappointed in that space because of how divorced mining is from Bitcoin. They're super separate, like not just aesthetically, but this has been something that's been just more and more obvious to me since working with Jason and Luke in Ocean, because none of the miners are really that well versed in what's going on in the Bitcoin space with development and with like these. The concept of not your keys, not your coins, it's a big part of HODL culture. It is not a big part of mining culture because everyone is happy just having all of their rewards go straight to the pool and then the pool pay them from some other source. And this is not even like when Ocean comes out and says, all right, our biggest 16 miners all get paid in the block. So the money, the minute it exists, it's already yours. Like we can't even touch it. And because we go from the top down, that results in 90% of the new coins getting created by Ocean never touch our hands. And this was something I thought, if the mining culture reflected Bitcoin culture, that would be like, this is fantastic. Instead, it barely moved the needle because people are like, oh, why do I need to take custody of my coins immediately? I'm like, for obvious reasons, right? For not your keys, not your coins. And it's like, no. And then you have, who's going to run Bitcoin Core if it's closed source and we find backdoors in it? Who's going to accept that? That would be a joke. We would get laughed out of the room. Like, even shitcoins don't do that. Whereas the majority of the hardware on the network is all made by one company with closed source firmware that we found backdoors in before. Antbleed was a thing. We knew they had remote access. They could shut down any ant miner in the world. Bitmain could do it. We caught them in the act and they went, oh, this was supposed to be, like how Apple can shut down an iPhone if you report it as stolen. But don't worry, we've got rid of it. And like, we totally caught you. Everyone is still doing it. And like the ideology of like, why would you run on your local area network at home closed source firmware by a malicious company that's tried to hijack the protocol before? And everyone's just like, I spend this much on electricity, I get that much back in sats. It's fine. Like most of the time they're dealing with electricity and real world stuff like that. So like, I'm just trying to illustrate how divorced the two mentalities are.
Yeah, perfect illustration I saw today at the expo area in the conference. I mean, this is one of the most high signal to noise ratio conferences there is, but it's not
Agreed.
Completely devoid of crypto, quote unquote crypto.
There's some of it.
So I saw some mining, I don't even know what the company was, but there was a couple of miners, a couple of ASICs. And they each had a sign above them, and one said had the Bitcoin logo and $11 per day. Another one had the Dogecoin logo and $27 per day. And it's like, holy shit! Are miners? Is this how miners think? Are they that low, short term oriented? So that they just think like, okay, I can make more money mining Dogecoin, and therefore they do. Like, is that how this works?
Well, people are scared of altruism and like ideological commitment to Bitcoin inside mining. And like, this was a big pushback from Ocean's anti-spam stuff. Was like, you're relying on the altruism of miners. That's a no-no. You've committed an ideological sin in the space. We cannot ever go outside of like pure, like just naive libertarian approach of no one ever does anything unless there's like, not only is it profitable for for them, but it also has to be only in the short term that it's profitable. Like, I'm not going to sit here and discuss libertarianism. Like, I find it it's incomplete like all ideologies. Like, obviously I like it and I'm partial to it, but like by this logic, no one is going to fix bugs in Bitcoin. No one's going to work on anything. No one's going to educate. Like, I hate it because you always have to backwards rationalize it and go like I'm doing this podcast and I'm talking to you about it because I care about this stuff. That's it. And like, yeah, you can play this stupid game that libertarians always do where they have to go, yes, but you care about it because you have your money in it and you need to protect your investment. And also maybe it's good for your, like, you're going to get more followers from it, or you're going to like, they always have to come up with some profitability reason.
Ethics is an incentive too, I would say. It's like
being able to look at yourself in the mirror when you get up is an incentive. So I hate that they always exclude that. So I'm like, miners, if you're aware of the fact that you're participating in an attack on the network, it's self-evident that you're not going to want to do that once you understand what it is. Ignorance is fine, but it stops being ignorance after a while and it becomes active participation and willful participation. Like ignorance, like, who's that guy? I really like listening to him. He's like a natural law advocate, Mark Passio. He talks about, ignorance, describing it as like, there's not knowing something, but then there's when the information enters the field and you choose to ignore it. That's why it's detestable. That's why when you call people ignorant, it's like, it's not that you're not aware of the thing. You know it's out there, but you're choosing not to think about it. So this is why when miners do this, when miners participate in the ongoing attack, that is being, mischaracterized and butchered, and you have these former heroes, Bitcoin Magazine, turning into absolute putrid, like bottom of the barrel attackers, trying to undermine all of these central characteristics. When you have that stuff going on, and it boggles the mind, because you know that if you surround yourself with snakes and shitcoiners, it leads to psychopathy pretty quickly. You watch all these people unravel very quickly, like in their own mess. But I'm like, I care about that, and I will help you not do it, but out of compassion. But I don't want you to bring down the network while you're doing it. So you have 100 million UTXOs turn into 200 million UTXOs in the space of a year. You have the implications for node runners, and
Please explain why that's a problem.
well, it just makes it harder to run a node. It's practically speaking, it seems like I'm still benchmarking, right? Like my initial horror around it was when I tried to do IBD, which is, the initial block download process for any new node. Like we want people to run nodes. We want a decentralized protocol, which for the language analogy, it's every node is a speaker of that language, and the language is centralized unless enough people speak it. And then you can have reliable, unchangeable rules. So what is Bitcoin? Like, it's rules that hopefully can't be changed in an unriggable game, because there's nothing worse than playing a game where someone keeps changing the rules every time you start to do well. That's what inflation is. It's, hey, I worked hard, I saved money to do this thing, and it didn't work because someone printed a bunch more money, and now I don't have the thing I worked for. That's like, I rolled a 6. And they went, well, that's actually, you move backwards instead of forwards. It's like, this is so annoying, and it makes you disillusioned and short-time preference and all that. So, wow, that was a tangent. You're asking me, what the implications of you need the nodes. Nodes are what makes Bitcoin not a shitcoin. I've been asking people this, very open-ended question, in the space, why is Bitcoin not a shitcoin? What's your reason for that? And that's a very good question. It's a very provocative question, because that's what we have to ask ourselves. Why do we get to have maximalism? Why do we get to have a superiority complex? How do we justify that? And, people give different answers. Immaculate conception is one. Culture is another. But to me, it's nodes. There is not a shitcoin in the world where they do more than do some sort of dismissive gesture towards nodes. Solana's my favorite because it costs literally 6 figures worth of equipment to be able to run a node there. So they're saying, this is not important to what we do. We don't need you running your fucking node. Craig Wright said the same, fuck off with your node unless you've got $20,000. I'm not trying to cater my protocol towards you guys. And Bitcoin, Luke, people like those were the champions of node running. They're saying node run, everything is downstream from the nodes. If you ever forget that hierarchy, then you can't. Bitcoin cannot be controlled by miners. It just can't. They have to be employees of the network. They cannot be dictators of the protocol. There cannot be that case, because if they ever get put in that position, then it's just, Obama putting a medal on his own neck. When that becomes the system of checks and balances, then Bitcoin is a centralized shitcoin. By definition, that's what it is.
And that's why I think the block size wars was such a pivotal moment, and where my conviction was ironclad was during that moment, because this is sort of a proof that we were actually in charge, the users, the node runners. But yeah, if that isn't the case anymore, so I mean, how big is this risk? Will we win? In your mind, what would it take for Bitcoin to survive this attack? Because another point there. If Bitcoin is allowed to be something else than money, then the incentive structure doesn't work, right? That's So and right now it's being used for a ton of other shit. And it's just how gold is not as good a money because it is used as jewelry and this Hayekian perspective.
Yeah, right.
So how big is this risk? How endangered is Bitcoin by this attack from this absolute scammers?
It remains to be seen. It's to round off what I should have said for your previous question. The attack, increasing the scope of what a node does, which is run a very low resource requiring computer to verify the entire financial history of this network, plus a few op returns here and there, if you like, from weirdos that want to do stuff in it. And and for your own benefit, have the entire UTXO set and an unscammable way of accepting money from anyone you've never met of any amount, for 600 gigabytes on a 1 terabyte solid state drive or whatever that costs you $100 on a an $100 little single board computer like a Raspberry Pi, that you manage to sync up to the network in 2 or 3 days. All of that to me is like, all right, that's kind of become the standard. And that was the Raspberry Pi 4, which was like the majority of nodes on the network because of these projects like Umbrella and Start9. And fantastic. That was good. It was doing a lot, and a lot of it doesn't even show up in the stats that people show because it's all Tor. And, so it like the things like 21nodes.com or whatever, they won't even see all those nodes. So Luke, again, runs a much better service that shows there's around, I don't know, it's like 60, 70,000 nodes on the network at the moment. That's credibly decentralized. It's good. But what they did not sign up for was to become redundant cloud storage for people like Michael Saylor that have a great idea about another thing we can do with Bitcoin's blockchain. Like, you're abusing that resource, which is an unpaid resource that is just, it's just like if you could magically say, like, I have this, like, appreciate English for a minute. It allows us all to communicate. Like, if you're Austrian and you're meeting a Russian or something, English is probably going to be really useful because it's a common thing that you probably both have. Now, imagine if, like, the resources that went into learning English as a child, or, that happened, that we gratefully was useful to enough people that they did it of their own volition. Foreigners that learned to speak English, they did this thing for their own benefit, and as a result, we all get English, and it's fucking useful. We can communicate. And it's great, and there's little attacks on languages around, woke ideologies that try to redefine words and stuff like that, and we still laugh at them and dismiss what they do. We still know men don't get periods. All that stuff, because it's decentralized enough. This is so useful as a fantastic, wonderful tool. But imagine you found a hole in the medium through which English traveled. Obviously, it doesn't work like that. And you went, I can hijack every one of those people that's got that set of rules in their brain, all those English speakers, and I can force them to start storing irrelevant crap and increasing the overhead of what it takes to learn English. So a 3-year-old can't learn it anymore.
So you need to learn Esperanto as well. Like
you're tacking it on. You're increasing the scope of what all these, like, no one is being paid to learn English. Like, they are doing it for their own good. And you're saying, I'm going to abuse the fact that you want to do it for your own good by making you have to do more. That's such a fucking sociopathic thing to do. It's so undermining to it, because you'll just get more and more people saying, I can't speak English. I'm just going to, like, rely on Google Translate to do it all. And I've got AI to do it. And then, great. Now there's OpenAI and a couple of other companies that are the gatekeepers of all human communication. That's what happens with Bitcoin. No one can run nodes anymore, so we all need permission to use the network. That's the way you trend with that.
So back to Saylor and this idea of
the DID scheme.
So yeah, the digital ID idea, whatever. It's like Michael Saylor as well. Like, everyone has a learning curve, right? And he has not been in the space for very long. I mean, he's got some great perspectives on it and whatnot, but couldn't this just be like, I mean, nobody's perfect. Couldn't this just be a flaw in the understanding? Is anyone talking to him about this stuff? Or does he get the wrong information because it's connected to the wrong people? Or why isn't anyone, like, anti-spam pilling him?
There's two ways with this. Like, I was sort of hit with an idea today about it that I hadn't thought of before. It can be 5D chess, because his explicit position is, stop fucking around with my money, stop with the opcodes, stop funding core developers altogether. And, like, I agree with him far more than most with this. I think there's deep wisdom in that. Stop, and I said it on stage earlier at this conference, like, I was the biggest proponent of SegWit and Taproot, and I was, like, a big part of pushing these in every way I could. Like, how helpful I was, I don't know, but I was very enthusiastic about it. And shit happened as a result of them that I did not expect. And I'm eating a humble pill from that, saying, I don't fucking know everything. Like, I will argue at Bcaches all day about how good SegWit is and all that, and I don't regret that they happened, but some shit happened that I wish hadn't happened, And Saylor is basically just having the wisdom to say, I don't care how solid you think OpCat is or OpCTV is. Something is going to happen as a result of these things that you didn't account for. And the bigger Bitcoin gets, the harder it is for us to fix it. So I was saying, I wanted to posit to Saylor, you have an exactly correct position there. It's reeks of wisdom, and it's something that the intelligent people in the space, but the naive young developer kind of breed of people that are very intelligent, like damagingly intelligent, but not very wise yet, won't be aware of.
No, it's a move fast and break things mentality, right?
But the best example we have of an unintended consequence of an otherwise good soft fork is what's going on with the spam. And Saylor is saying, all right, I'm going to engage in the spam. That's what he's doing. He's not using op return. He's using the grossest hack possible to trick nodes into storing transactions that are, they're fake transactions that are tricking nodes into believing something is a script that isn't a script, that's really just a bunch of arbitrary data.
When we say he's doing it, we really mean that this is a potential, it's like a suggested thing from MicroStrategy, right?
I don't know where they are in the process of it, but they've laid it out. They've said the mechanism by which they're going to add data into the chain, and it's not op return. This is what I asked him, and he said, I don't know the mechanism, and then they published it, and it's like, wow, this is the mechanism.
This was the conversation that the three of us happened to fall into on the Madeira, actually. We remember that, but can you quickly
Yes, we were all there, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
I've spoken to Saylor many times, but I never get more than 15 seconds because someone always comes along and shakes hands and talks about what a genius he is. And I love Saylor. I think he is a genius, but you're asking about the psychology here. If it's 5D chess, it's him saying, you want to keep doing upgrades? Well, when there's problems with them, people like me will come along and exploit those problems, and there's nothing you can do about it. So he is simultaneously a complete hypocrite for saying, don't fuck with perfect money. And by the way, I'm using this new thing that's only possible because someone fucked with perfect money that undermines everything. Or he's just that's completely hypogritical. Or he's just saying, I told you. I don't know which it is.
So Michael, if you're watching, have a conversation with these guys.
I've reached out to him before to talk. I've never managed to get any kind of response or anything like that. Busy guy. I don't question his motivation and commitment. I really think he's a sincere and good advocate. The only thing I take issue with is when he's telling people to mortgage their house to buy Bitcoin. And dude, do not buy money. We don't have 0% interest like you do. Well, the rest of us have this is credit card debt you're getting people into to pump bags. This is really irresponsible. I don't know why he hasn't said, yeah, that was maybe not good. He borrows money at 0%, right? So sure, buy 21 million Bitcoins at 0% interest. No brainer, right? But your average pleb needs to not do that. They need to just earn and stack what they can and do their UTXO management, and don't be borrowing money to buy Bitcoin ever, because then you have to sell it at some point to repay the loan, and you'll probably have to do that at a loss. Even if you 50-50 chance of being right or wrong with the market plus the interest on the loan means you're down. You have a greater chance of losing than winning. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to. So I mean, everything in terms of Saylor specifically, some good points. But I think just for the sake of explaining what the difference is between op return and the new types of spam, can you do just a little TLDR on op return versus what all the new types of things are? Because there's a few of them, right?
So op return was done as a compromise to try and make it so that there was the least resource intensive, or the least expensive to the network method of storing arbitrary data. It doesn't bloat the UTXO set like other methods, and everything in it's provably prunable. So even if you send sats to an op return output, which you don't have to do, those sats are never spendable again. So as a node, you don't need to care about it. You can make an op return of 1 Bitcoin if you like, and every node can discard it because that Bitcoin can never be spent. So that's not true of other things like fake public keys, right? Which was a thing people were doing before op return, where even though those are also unspendable, your node has to do a bunch of calculation to verify that those public keys are genuinely not true or not. And like, I think it's roughly 50% of out of the total space of public keys you can generate, 50% of them are spendable and 50% of them aren't. And you don't know that trivially. So you've seen that like one Bitcoin Ether address don't send address that people use as an example. You can send Bitcoins to that. You can't spend from that. It's not a valid public key, but your node will treat them as the same because it's too computationally expensive to verify outputs. Like we can soft fork to an address type, in which transactions are only valid in blocks if the node runs some calculations and says, yes, all these outputs are to valid addresses that are spendable. There's a computational cost to that, but it's not actually that undoable. And this is like a controversial thing I probably shouldn't get into, but the assumption was that's not possible. So to stop people using freaking fake public keys, we're going to create something which is provably the same thing as a fake public key that can't be a real, like, spendable output. That's what op return is. And it was a good compromise for a while. I don't think it lasted. And unfortunately, the witness discount that came with SegWit meant they found a way to do, like, op return was, you weren't seeing any bigger than 83 bytes because that was the default on Bitcoin Core. And they weren't getting any kind of discount versus real transactions. So SegWit and Taproot come along, and suddenly you have the 83 byte limit doesn't apply to the bug they found a way to exploit, and it gets to take advantage of the witness discount too. So
what's the basics of the bug that's being exploited?
You're creating something that looks like a script, but you're using like you have if conditions, right? Where if this then that, like, and you're creating they're putting the false opcode before the op if. And so the op false says, ignore the following chunk of code. The following chunk of code can never execute. And then there's an if condition that will never be, called. I don't know the right thing, right? And that contains a bunch of arbitrary data. And your Bitcoin node doesn't mind that it's there or that it's invalid as a script, or doesn't make any sense because the false has told it to ignore it all. But it's deliberately hacking its way into a script, and like it's just saying like, it's like I want to blab a bunch of crap at you that you've never heard. So I come to you and say, hey, I got something interesting to tell you, blah, 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 blah. And I force you to stand there and listen to it and absorb it all, and then go,
that happens
oh, never mind, actually, I didn't have anything to say. And then you walk off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like you're forcing someone to listen to something that is irrelevant.
It's like when there's a Q&A section and someone says, yeah, I have a question, and then it's not a question, it's a rant for 20 minutes.
Right. But the structure of what it is and the sort of social norm of that context where someone's asking a question forces you to listen to it, right?
Yeah. So
it's like a hack of that nature.
Isn't it the case that, and like add rant?
Yeah, it's data injection. Like, this is, as Jason put it, this is computer science 101. You're putting data in a way that's not accepted by the thing. It's like if you're typing in code into the login field on a website that doesn't have, like, what do they call it, sanitized inputs. Like, and have you ever like tried to like create a username or account with database language and stuff in it to try and like make Facebook dump all their users stuff? Like, you can try and do that, but they prevent you from doing it because there's data injection. Like,
but it's even easier. It's like when you put the web address in the search bar instead of the address bar.
Yeah, right.
Even that, like, it's like my mother using the computer.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just something about doing that. To me, it's just like, I used this bus analogy before, and it's a good analogy, and I do stick to it. It's like you design a city, and people are just about getting around it, and there's a bus service, and then FedEx figures out they can put packages on the bus and you do that cheaper than getting their own vans and all that. And, you have the idiots that are like, so what? Who gets to define what a package is versus a human being? Like, I have a backpack. Are you going to not let me on the bus as part of your new censorship thing to not let FedEx use it? I'm like, but look, guys, no one can make it around the city anymore because FedEx have all this money and they're using a bus service for something that wasn't designed. But now you have, like, Michael Saylor. You've got a cardboard box that you've like put this scarecrow thing around to make it look like a human, to sneak it onto the bus, to trick the bus driver that this thing really is a human. Like, ask yourself why you have to paint this picture. Why are you playing this charade? It's because the intentions of everyone involved in this wants this to be a bus service, not a courier. Like, the fact that you have to disguise your actions and hack stuff and trick nodes should tell you that you're doing something untoward. If Bitcoin was all about being an arbitrary data storage mechanism for like all these wild ideas we can do, like decentralized identity and all that, it would be, you wouldn't have to hack it. You would just do it. Like, nodes would just accept it on the off. The fact that you have to like trick it, it should betray to you the fact that you're using a tool that doesn't want to be used for that job. And it's like, on the one hand, you can go, wow, what a cypherpunk you are for figuring out how to hack a system. On the other hand, you can just go, this is unethical. Like, this is designed for a purpose and you're not using it for that. And there's a reason for this.
All right, Luke, let's talk about Riga. Why people should go to Riga this specific year. There is so much here. I mean, Riga Bitcoin Week this year is absolutely fantastic. It starts off with Noob Day, and following Noob Day, our own Infinity Day party at the basement bar, which is just spectacular. And there's a rumor going around that there'll be some free drinks or something. So that's just great. And after that, it's the Freedom Unconference, which is a Noster-themed freedom couple of days before the actual Riga Baltic Hunting Badger conference starts. And after that, of course, it's BTC Pay Server Day. And there are karaoke nights and official parties and whatnot. So come celebrate Infinity Day and the launch of The Inverse of Clown World, our new book, in Riga this year. Of course, 21st of August, use code FREEDOM for 10% off your Riga ticket. Don't miss this.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I have nothing to add.
You don't need to add. This was the ad.
Oh, okay. Back to the show.
Okay. Like, there's this narrative that like Bitcoin thrives in an adversarial environment, and Bitcoin is for enemies.
It does if its community is prepared to acknowledge that it's under attack and actually fight back. If it's not, then it just collapses. Bitcoin cannot withstand its own miners attacking it and thinking they're not. Bitcoin, no one survives a drug addiction problem where they start attacking their own body. Sure, like, I can attack you and you can get stronger as a result, but if you imagine the attack to be a good thing and you totally open yourself up to it, then you're fucked.
But my question is more like, if Bitcoin survives this attack, will it be better off than if this attack wouldn't have happened at all? Like, is this lesson in vigilance a good thing or a bad thing?
If we survive this, great. But the reason I'm not optimistic is because we've already survived it, and some attacks keep repeating, right? Like big blockers, they just keep. It's like a perennial, eternal September kind of thing. Like, you have big blockers from ages ago. We were all big blockers, and then you have like the New York Agreement big blockers, and the Roger Ver big blockers, and the Bitmain big blockers, and now you even have the Andreas big blocker and the Elon Musk big blocker.
That.
Like,
that was a surprise.
I know it's painfully naive for someone of his intelligence. Like, I honestly can't believe that.
No, it's like
what I'm hearing here.
The way I see it is like, we didn't get it's like some of the early generation stuff, like genius programmers not understanding the economics. Like, there's a discrepancy.
Well, they don't necessarily. Like, just because you're a fantastic developer doesn't mean you know anything about economics. And like,
it's such a confusing field to so many.
Satoshi was like the perfect jack of all trades because he understood enough about each field to design a system. Like, it's not, if he'd have just been like a million times better at C++ and just not any good at, economics, you wouldn't have Bitcoin. You have the specialist. But I think to answer what you just said is a really provoking question, because you have these like perennial issues that keep coming up over and over again, and you have to fight them off every time. Like, so China banning Bitcoin is like a one-off where we've gone, good luck with a nation state banning mining, that will lose. And I think that's one of those battles you fight once and you've demonstrated you can succeed and you recover, the difficulty adjusted like it was supposed to. All the miners in other countries just made twice as much Bitcoin suddenly, and it was great, and we all laughed and we all are happy. And I don't think it's going to get tried again. Rogue developers, we've done that. We've done exchanges collapsing. These are things that will actually repeat. So when an ETF gets caught doing its Enron shit, and it turns out like they've got no Bitcoin and they've been selling fake Bitcoin on their balance sheet and all that, and even though they ticked all the boxes, this is going to happen, right? One of these ETFs is going to not have the Bitcoin it says it does. It's an accident waiting to happen. That's going to be Mt. Gox 2.0, right? FTX was already that, right? But like these are inevitable, and unfortunately, those are battles that you have to keep winning over and over again. And that's like weeding in the garden. And if one day it becomes apparent that the weeders are not paying attention anymore, then within 6 months you're overgrown with weeds. And that's what I think is happening with decentralization. And because I'm endeavoring to like make a point here when it comes to spam. We've fought spam and arbitrary data before, and we won. That's why op return is where it is, and that's why all of the shitcoiners got the ump and went over to Ethereum, because we won those battles, and we told them, like, yes, you can still put arbitrary data in as fake public keys, and yes, you can use op return, but go away. And that means you can't raise money unless you tell the venture capitalists, don't worry, we're doing it on Ethereum that actually wants us to do it. Like the minute, like if you've got millions of dollars to invest in something like the Taproot Wizards or whatever scam it is they're doing, and any VC is going to do their due diligence and go, you're doing it on Bitcoin, and as far as I can tell, these guys are hostile to it. They might fork to prevent you from doing what you're doing, and it's going to take us months to raise the capital and build the thing and gamify the whole attack to the point where it becomes an actual problem for Bitcoin, right? If you want to take your spam to that level where you have enough NFT idiots participating in and funding the attack, you need a relatively docile Bitcoin and a community that's demonstrated it doesn't really care that much. Like, this is why the spam is so easy to defeat, because you just, when you have Vladimir van der Laan and, you know, and Jeff Garzik back in 2014 and Luke Jr. saying, go away with Counterparty, do it somewhere else. Like, there's no soft fork. You don't need it. The developers go, all right, well, I'm not going to spend the next 6 months writing a bunch of code for like an arbitrary data thing that on Bitcoin that gets like shunned by the thing. I mean, it's not worth my time. Like now, because we're ambivalent and we're flaccid enough as a community, it got to escape velocity, and rather than be the odd op return here and there, it's become like a massive systemic issue. Like, and you can root that out if you want, but after a point of no return, it's like the garden with the inevitable weeds has now turned into an absolute jungle, and I can't really do anything about it anymore. In fact, we've kind of lost this, you know, so you have to keep arbitrary data in Bitcoin. Spam mitigation in any protocol always requires active participation and ongoing cat and mouse games.
So I love how you say that you were humbled by
Segwit and Taproot.
And that there were these unforeseen consequences that you saw them later down the line, and I echo that with like the view I used to have of us winning the block size wars. Us, I say us for lack of a better word, but like, you know,
I don't have
not
this
scamming
same,
people.
Yeah,
it's like it's like this is proof that the users are in charge of Bitcoin. But actually, like in hindsight, how I see it now is like it's proof that we were in charge then. It's not proof that we're in charge now. Like this is it's like Ronald Reagan of all people said, like, that freedom is a battle each generation has to fight. We can't become complacent because we're losing. Yeah,
eternal vigilance, man.
That's what we need. And so how do we instill eternal vigilance into the culture? Like,
well, I think benchmarking is quite revealing. So when I didn't finish explaining what I'd done here. So back in the day, working at Start9, it was like my job. Like, I've synced Bitcoin so many times on low-end hardware, and on a Raspberry Pi 4 back in 2022, I could sync using an SSD, a Raspberry Pi 4 with 8 gigabytes of RAM and like default core settings and a whole bunch of, you know, like no rigging the system, just like a normal node firing up, clear net connections. Tor is not the bottleneck, all that stuff. Take 48 hours. I did it on Mexican internet for like a whole year in 2022. Like dodgy Wi-Fi, power outages, stuff like that. You know, so now the Raspberry Pi 5 is out. The CPU is two times as powerful. You get the same SSD, and it's taking over 100 hours rather than about 48, right? And that's 1 year's worth of damage. So it's like inflation, it compounds. So when the government's like, don't worry, inflation's back to 2%, I'm like, 2% on top of what's happened these last few years. And people don't understand compounding, disasters like that. So if you carry on at the rate we're at with the explosion of UTXOs, then it's just degrading to what can happen on IBD. Really, you want people to be able to run a node on an Android. Like, that would be great. And you're not far off that. But, so what were you talking about a second ago? Because this was related to that. And that's why so bench, that's it. That's how you galvanize people and make them go, this is a problem. People have to see the stats. They have to try and run nodes, and then they have to go, this is fucked. I can't do this anymore. If you can't run a node, then it's over. Then you need someone else's permission to use the network. That's it. Like, you've undermined the core tenet.
Slightly philosophical question. When should someone adopting Bitcoin run a node?
It depends what you want to do. I think when it comes to anything privacy related, this is like the elegance of the whole thing. Like, Bitcoin is incredibly awful when it comes to privacy. That's the trade-off for like auditability, like, and using tried and true cryptography rather than experimental things. Like, so you want to use Bitcoin privately. If you want to do anything, like look up where your transaction is it in the blockchain yet? If you want to run like a CoinJoin coordinator, if you want to do anything that might have any like hope of you preserving your privacy, you have to run a node, because that's at the base of the stack. If you want to, like, Lightning's great and it's more private than Bitcoin, and everyone uses LSPs, which means there is zero privacy. If you want to use Lightning privately, like it's allows you to do, then you need to run a node, because your Lightning node has to sit on top of the Bitcoin node. The Bitcoin nodes don't do anything at all by themselves. The whole point is it needs to be something you use and is your gateway to the network. And if you replace that with a human that does it on your behalf, then those coalesce into one big thing. Like, Phoenix is like the dominant Lightning provider now, and they have the potential to just be the Google of Bitcoin in the future. Like, no one runs an email server. Everyone has a Gmail account. It's a permissioned protocol. Like, yes, SMTP is open, permissionless, borderless, all that. Good luck using email that way. Like, if you want, there's another social layer on top with like a closed system that you need to be a part of the club to be able to participate in the protocol. That can happen to Bitcoin too. And the only way it doesn't is if you run the node, and you, like, it's, to Bitcoin's credit, it's the best I've ever seen of people go like, I need to participate directly with this thing at the protocol levels for it to remain permissionless. Like, so when should someone run a node? The minute they want to do, I think privacy is the best example. Running it as a mere virtue signal when you don't actually use it is kind of, that gives us a false sense of security, and I kind of wish people just wouldn't do it. Like, I wish everyone running a node wasn't just, running it for its own good or for its own feeling, and all of their wallets didn't ever touch it. Like, so they're using a phone wallet, like, but it's like, this is like a problem since forever. Like, Electrum's amazing wallet, and it by default does not use your own node, and it's actually really difficult because you need to run an Electrum server. And even then, when you connect it to the Electrum server, it will still reach out to other public Electrum servers, and you just have to assume these are all spook run. Like, and that's a nightmare. Like, Samurai, anyone that's familiar with me knows I despised that project. To their credit, and to my sheer horror, they were the only wallet that if you configured it to connect to your own node and your node was down for some reason, it wouldn't just go, all right, I'll connect to a bunch of public ones instead. It would just not work, which is probably an artifact of incompetence rather than ideological. But like, nonetheless, I'm like, I can't believe other wallets. So with Francis's Bull Bitcoin wallet that's about to come out, it's great. But I'm like, dude, it needs to have like a hardcore mode where it doesn't work unless it's connected to your node. And everyone's running Electrum servers and Bitcoin nodes using Umbrels and Start9s, which means it's all Tor based, which means it doesn't freaking work half the time. So I need it to not connect to other stuff like Blockstream Green, Wasabi Wallet, all of these things that give you the option of connecting to your own node. It's a little different with Wasabi because they use block filters and all that. So there's still privacy, even though you don't run a node. But I mean, that's not great. I mean, it's a compromise. The point is, all of them will work and give you no indication that it's not actually using your own backend. They will just work anyway. They will reach out to other servers, and half the time you configure it to run on your own node and it didn't even work. It didn't even do what you think it did after you pressed save or OK. It's not even using your node. The fact that that's like the norm in our, like Zeus wallet's my favorite Lightning wallet. It still has an option, like the default of it is to use someone else's backend. Like I don't want to bash it because it's such a good project, and I've used Zeus to I've never used Zeus that way. Zeus always connects to my own node, whether it's LND or CLN. That should be just absolutely the default, and it's just not. And until it is, no one has an incentive to run a node. So I used to do this whole thing where I would set people up in Bitcoin. And it's like day one of Bitcoin. All right, we're ordering you hardware to run a node. And people are like, no, let them ease into it. Just download, green or blue wallet on your phone, and they'll start that way. I'm like, no, because they'll never not do it that way. If you start them that way, that will be it forever. And Spectre wallet, which is my favorite, was another great example. Like you download it, and it wants to know where your node is. And if you don't have one, it just doesn't work. Like this is Moritz, who was working there at the time. I hope he still is. Said default settings define user behavior. This is absolutely true. So if you're Electrum wallet and you don't push people to run their own node, then no one actually will. And even if they do run it, it won't have anything to do with their wallet activities, and their Lightning activities they'll just be separated. So the node isn't really doing anything. It's just providing a redundant copy of the blockchain, but it's not part of your sovereign approach as a Bitcoiner. So you have to. It's a mindful design process of everyone in the network saying, I'm not prepared to Bitcoin unless it's going through my own node. If that's a dominant part of the culture, everything's downstream of that. And this is all social, right? And it's when we talk about we and everyone is allergic to any sort of collectivism, and you're careful, like us and we. I don't want to use these words. Sorry, like culture is like Bitcoin is a very powerful and strong culture with powerful memes. And these are so essential for defining how people's actions are. Like running a node's not a thing you just do. Like no one runs a server. Like running a node is most people getting their feet wet in running their first server ever. Like no one would do that when you're signing them up to their first email account 20 years ago. No one's going to be like, oh, I'm going to run my own email server. That wasn't a part of email culture. It just wasn't. Like Bitcoin has this, and it's great. And it's why the network has the resilience it does. To celebrate it and keep pushing that way.
Yeah, but I speaking for myself, I think like I can do more good encouraging people to do these things than doing them myself. Basically, if I spend my time,
well, they're both valuable.
Yeah, of course, I should do it myself, and I should like deep dive more into all the stuff. But everything's a trade-off, and like you only have limited time. So like, yeah. Run your node and like subscribe and brush your teeth.
Well, this is like the government is the biggest help with all this stuff. Like, and I mean, there's no eternal vigilance without an obvious enemy who is trying to fuck you over. Like you need tyrannical governments for people to understand the Second Amendment. Otherwise, they will just go, oh, guns are stupid. We don't need them. Like, it's like, that's just so obvious, right? So you need Biden to win the election, and you need him to be really stupid. Like, because you need him to go like, well, Trump's in favor of Bitcoin. I'm going to make Bitcoin illegal. And then everyone's like, shit, I have to run my own node now, because like the best thing ever is Samurai gets arrested and privacy becomes bad. Biggest overnight upgrade to Bitcoin's privacy that's ever happened, thanks to the US government. The broken privacy tool is gone. Now everyone's forced to use Join Market and Wasabi. That was amazing. And everyone is like lamenting about it. And I'm like, it's awful. Like in principle, these people should not be arrested for what they were doing. It's wrong. But on a practical level, this was so good. Like I can tell people till I'm blue in the face, podcast after podcast, don't use Samurai. No. But it doesn't matter. The government can come along and arrest them. Okay, great. Like, I'm sorry. Like, please don't get confused. Like my point is here. I'm no way think it's okay that they are facing the awful shit they're facing. Right. And personal dislike aside, I hope they walk free. Like, I believe in the same mission. I'm on the same team. But I'm just saying, so when it comes to other things, run a node. Like, I can tell people run a node forever. If Biden comes along and says, that's it, Bitcoin's illegal, then you have no choice suddenly. Like, but it already happened is my point. Like, all of these wallets left America. Like so many companies just went, that's it. We're not doing Wallet of Satoshi.
It's shutting down because it's not worth it.
Wasabi CoinJoin Coordinator. No more. Like every single one of these was really good. Now everyone that wants to use Wasabi has to run a coordinator. Yes. Now do you know how good that is for decentralization? Like, and you can't do stuff like that. And it's like Bitcoin itself can't even be demonstrably useful unless governments print money and fuck up entire generations and hyperinflate and like rob your savings account, and like without that no one is going to understand Bitcoin. Like I can tell you like it's like Saifedean says, like if they get fiscally responsible and adopt a gold standard, then Bitcoin's fucked. That's it.
This is so funny because we ask a lot of our guests if they're like more pro Bitcoin politician or an anti Bitcoin politician, and like seeing how the community reacts to Donald Trump all of a sudden saying stuff, and like and everyone's like, oh, of course we should vote for Trump. Like, are you mad? Like what? This crony capitalist like guy who printed money to give out to people during COVID and did lockdowns and stuff. You think he's Donald Trump of all people is gonna keep his promise, and like you want his permission to run your node? What the fuck? What's wrong with people?
I just can't, like, on an ideological level, like I think everyone's just seeking approval. Everyone's insecure and everyone's like, oh, Trump now says Bitcoin's good. Like, now look, Dad, am I still an idiot now, Dad, for being into Bitcoin? Like, I think it's that. I think like it's like people just, they're so used to being called crazy by everyone in their family. And then when Trump comes out and says, like, Bitcoin's really good, I got a lot of Bitcoin. Like, just, if he comes out like that, everyone's like, I'm validated, yes.
Yes,
like, I'm
what
validated.
are the odds that Trump is running a node?
But it's so naive. Like, it's so naive. First, like, it's such a horrible form of it. Like, it's the public goes in mining again. It's the high hash rate that has no discernible real effect on Bitcoin's overall security. It just looks good. Like, difficulty went way up, so now an attacker will have more work to do to reorg the chain. Yes, but what if that is the attacker?
Yes.
Like, what if that person that's making it unprofitable to mine, if for any pleb in the world, because that's the higher the difficulty, the more everyone else gives up mining. All of the difficulty is only so high because of zombie pubcos that are losing money, spinning nice narratives, and selling, you know, being an artifact of the money printer. Like, people are printing money, investing in garbage, and they don't know anything about it, but they'll invest in a bunch of publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies that are mining at a loss, making the difficulty go higher, and providing no network security at all, because they will do exactly what they're told by the regulatory bodies that allow them to exist. These are not cypherpunks, they're not miners, and they're not a line of defense for the network. All they are doing is just making it less profitable to be all of those things. That's an illusion of security, and Trump is the perfect example of like that. It's like he will approve of Bitcoin, but it will be government-approved Bitcoin, which puts it in a set of confines that it's unprofitable to step outside of it. Like, if I want to buy salt, it's cheap. If I want to buy an illegal white powder, it's 100,000 times more expensive because it's not operating within these confines. So if they're going to create two classes of Bitcoin, which is approved Bitcoin, that implies an unapproved Bitcoin. And the minute, like, we have this with the KYC system. It's like I have these two types of Bitcoin. Everyone's like, I have my KYC stash and I have my no KYC stash. I'm like, that's the government fucking us, because that's an attack on fungibility from the start. You cannot have two classes of this thing, because all sats are equal. One sat equals one sat at the protocol level. The minute you corrupt that understanding, you undermine it. So what you want is for governments to help us by saying there is only one Bitcoin. All of it's equal, and they can only do that by completely ignoring it, which is impossible, or by making it all illegal. Those are the only two ways in which you can get their help. So this is why it's so useful when they go hysterically overreact. This is why I hope it happens. I hope they rig it again. I hope Biden wins, and I hope he makes it a big part of his strategy to be hysterically stupid when it comes to Bitcoin and go, that's it, it's all illegal. Then all the LSPs are gone. Everyone has to run a node. All of the publicly traded miners are gone. So that just means plebs mining in their garage just make more money. Like, suddenly everything gets way better. They fix everything overnight, just like they did with privacy. And I'm just like, it feels psychopathic for me to want this. I'm not in America. I don't live there, and I don't need to worry about these things. I don't want to be a martyr, and it hurts. I get it, but I'm sorry, we just don't. You gotta get hurt to grow. And Bitcoin anti-fragility is inefficient, and we will always. No one is voluntarily anti-fragile. No one wants to have I'll have 15 kids, and then I'll ask someone to come in my house with and start killing people, and whoever the strongest are survive, and then I have a stronger offspring. Like, no one would voluntarily want that, right? But it would be how you'd make your genetic lineage more strong, right? Like, but it would work, is my point. Like, but it's psychopathic. We want an easy life, but the easy life is rotten, and it's centralized, and it's really efficient. And so, like, what I really want is everyone to use BISC. I want everyone to use decentralized exchanges. Everyone is just going to use Coinbase, right? Because it's more efficient, it's cheaper. And I'm like, again, Joe Biden can crush that. In 1 minute, he can say, you guys don't have permission anymore. Bitcoin's illegal. So I'm like, this is, if we have any sense, we vote for hostile politicians or like complete Ron Paul types that will genuinely, reliably just leave us the fuck alone. So, but Trump is not that kind of politician. He's someone that will create a sandboxed Bitcoin that's government approved as a gesture to this particular portion of his voting base. And that's not going to help with resilience at all.
Is Bukele that person?
Good question.
Is Milei that person?
I don't know enough about Milei. I think Milei is like, certainly he talks the talk.
There are hints that he's not walking the walk, like that you need to report your crypto holdings or whatever.
Yeah, I saw that. But again, I don't claim to understand the residual laws and stuff of Argentina, right? I don't know. Like, I want to like Milei. I do. Like,
yeah,
but that doesn't mean I know like shit about fuck. So like,
no. I want to like everything he does and says is stuff that I like. I mean, he quotes Rothbard. He dresses as a superhero. He has a chainsaw. And he has the best sideburns ever, so how can you not love him? Well, he's a politician.
Yeah,
okay, that's why.
And he's got like foul language as well, which is a refreshing. It's very refreshing.
I love it. Yeah.
I don't think like I think again the best thing Bukele can do is just step out of the way when it comes to Bitcoin. Like,
but it's not.
Well,
he's saying like legal tender laws is not stepping out of the way. It is like dictating the way.
Well, the way they did it was not. The way the law is written and the way it's interpreted, I'll pay more attention to the latter until you become a real, like, Nazi, like pedantic.
Yeah. I know. Libertarianism, Nazism.
It sets a bad precedent, but like in theory, there's punishment for not. No, actually, that's not even true. There's a caveat in the law that they made around the legal tender where it looked for a minute that if you don't accept Bitcoin in El Salvador, you're in trouble. But there was something later on in the same document that said, don't worry about it. And that was my experience when I'm there. Like 90% of merchants don't accept it. And they're not worried that they're about to get arrested because they only take the dollar. Like, there's no enforcement on that level. And the law isn't even structured that way anyway. And to be honest, it's like a stupid social thing, right? Like all of the old political parties, because he's like a weird out left field candidate, right? That miraculously won. So all of the old political guard, like, he's like if the Libertarian Party were to win in America, like the Republicans and the Democrats are going to trash you and all of the crony capitalists are going to take part in that. So actually none of the elite in El Salvador are into Bitcoin. Like, so if you're like at Bitcoin Beach buying a banana, yeah, they'll take Lightning. But if you're in a steakhouse up in the middle of the mountain somewhere, they don't take Bitcoin because they're like old rich in the country. They don't like Bukele. He's like a populist candidate or whatever, and he didn't make the right agreements with them. They have their, little things with the entrenched elite that weren't doing anything about how crap the country was. And so by virtue of that, they have to be anti-Bitcoin because it's a Bukele initiative. So that's just politics, right?
Did you spend a lot of time there?
Yeah, I spent 2 weeks there earlier this year. We were in El Zonte for most of it. Like El Zonte, I didn't use my credit card once, but I never really went outside El Zonte. So, but when I went, but I spoke to John Attack a lot, who's a core developer that lives in, and he explained how it breaks down. Like all the kids there, like the teenagers think Bitcoin's like gay and they don't want to touch it, right? They're just like, because it's like a government approved thing. It's not a cypherpunk thing to them. It's just like, oh yeah, like what's this shit? Like I don't want to use Bitcoin. Like the government told me it's good. It's like, it's just that level of like mind. I'm not talking about like resilience for the overall network. Like Chivo is obviously just crap as far as I can tell. Like it can't even, half the time it can't find an on-chain transaction. Like, I mean, it's a government IT project. How good was it going to be? Like, no one, I paid like 90 payments when I was in El Salvador. Not a single person used Chivo.
Yeah, but that's good.
Well, sure, but like they're all still using Blink, which is good, but it's centralized and it's permissioned and it's nothing like what Lightning's supposed to be. And a few people use Wallet of Satoshi, and that's the same, right? I never paid someone that was running their own node. Like that never happened.
Hey, look, why did the chicken brush his teeth?
Why, Knut?
Do chickens even have teeth? To get to the Bitbox on the other side of the road.
What a fantastic idea. The Bitbox is our favorite hardware wallet for a lot of reasons. It's easy to use, apparently also for chickens. Bitbox cares about your security and your privacy. They take measures to make sure they're not collecting more information about you than they need to. And they also have fantastic customer support. They get rave reviews. So if you have any issues with your Bitbox or you don't know how to use it for some reason, then they can help you out and take care of you.
So go to bitbox.swiss/freedom or use code FREEDOM for 5% off your Bitbox right now. Hey, Luke, what's the difference between a chickpea and a Bitcoin advisor?
What, Knut?
I never had a Bitcoin advisor on my face. But you could have one in your face because we're Bitcoin advisors.
That's right, Knut. We're working with the Bitcoin Advisor, and we're all about securing your Bitcoin for the long term. The Bitcoin Advisor has a collaborative multi-sig solution so that you can secure your Bitcoin for the next 20 years and beyond. Even if you lose one of your keys or something happens where it's an inheritance situation, they've got you covered, and we can help you get there. So go to thebitcoinadvisor.com for more information, or you can reach out to us and book a call so that we can explain everything to you ourselves. Doesn't that sound awesome?
Sounds absolutely spectacular. It's basically boating accident insurance, isn't it?
Exactly. Although, boating accidents, well,
you could have boating accidents anyway. Like, I mean, whatever.
Go to thebitcoinadvisor.com today.
Do the things.
So when it comes to custodial lightning, so like how big of a problem is that? Because the way I see it is like, okay, it's custodial, so they could technically do fractional reserve banking on lightning.
Yeah.
But it's still more monitorable than the old banking system. So it's like it's harder to do fractional reserve on Bitcoin than to do it on.
This was Lynn Alden's point. Like, the more easy it is for you to verify a thing, the less out of bounds with reality it can become. Like, so because gold is that hard to verify, you can have X amount more gold, fake gold in the system. Because Bitcoin is this easy to verify, you can have a fraction of whatever that X value is. Like how much gold is there supposed to be and how much gold actually is there. There's like a greater room for something like in theory, like the collective spreadsheets of the world with all the 21 million Bitcoins, like there's going to be more than 21 million because someone is running a scam somewhere. But in theory, I think the theory is correct. Like it can't get to run away. Like, I'm sure if you add up all the spreadsheets in the world, all the exchanges, there is too many Bitcoin. Someone is lying about it, but it can't. Yeah, the point is it can't.
So custodial lightning is bad, but it's still better than the old banking system. That's like my position, and I'm just trying to verify that.
Custodial lightning to me is it's a complete and utter waste of time, because if it's all in a centralized database, just do custodial on chain. Like, it's either way, it's off chain. Like, there is no benefit. Like, apart from the fact that if I'm a real Lightning user, which no one is, I can actually pay you and someone else can run the back end and, organize that. But if every single person in El Salvador, which is basically the case, is all just moving around Lightning, but it's all just in Blink's database, same with Strike, or if everyone is just doing that, why are we calling it Lightning? It's literally just a database run by a company. You might as well just do it on chain. Like because it wouldn't be on chain is the point. You're not using Lightning, so the point of Lightning is to not have an on chain footprint. But if you're never touching the chain, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do get it.
I don't get why it's called Lightning. It doesn't really.
No. But maybe it should be called something else. But still like it provides a service. If you're doing small payments and then even more importantly, receiving small payments, and then when you come home, you send it to cold storage and you're fine. Like so like because the convenience is the speed of it.
I think so. Like when you interact with the network, it helps that it's a Lightning wallet, like because you can get in and out, and like Blink and Wallet of Satoshi are obviously running Lightning infrastructure, so they can pay and receive that way. So it's useful. It's just the way it manifested is such a bastardization of what the point of Lightning was anyway. The point was, remain sovereign without an on-chain footprint, but they got rid of the sovereign bit. So it's like, okay, so now it's just no on-chain footprint. All right. But then that's not.
Then what's
at
the
that point? There's no point in Lightning. Just move money around Coinbase accounts, or whatever third party you want. Like you're trusting a centralized third party to hold your Bitcoin for you and move it around internally. And that's good. That was always going to happen, right? It's just weird to call it Lightning for me. It's misleading. Like I don't want to say it's like pointless, because I'm saying that here and I take it back. It's not pointless because I was able to use it with my own Lightning infrastructure, and you cannot if you can't set up a Lightning node and I need to pay you Lightning, then great, use Blink or Wallet of Satoshi or Phoenix and they'll handle it for you. I'm just saying now most people's impression of Lightning has nothing to do with what it actually is supposed to do. It's supposed to be a way for you to aggregate all your on-chain activity and be more efficient with it, and that's not what they're doing with it, and that won't be their understanding of it.
Well, still is better than a Coinbase account because you can actually interact with the real deal.
I mean, Coinbase have Lightning now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it is, at the end of the day, it just comes down to, like, I like Andrew from Blink a lot more than I like Brian Armstrong from Coinbase. But they're still in the same position. I'm still not sovereign anymore. So, sucks. I don't know. There's no solution to this. My only solution is just, someone needs to die. It's just awful. I'm sorry, but, you need them to come and crack down on Bitcoin and just be horrible about it, and then everyone is just forced to go underground with it. And the fear about it making the price tank to me is not valid at all, because all the price discovery mechanisms also disappeared. How can the price tank if Bitcoin's illegal? Where are you doing the exchange? What's the? You're not on CoinGecko. What's the price today? It's those APIs will be gone. Where's the price discovery mechanism? It's the same as it is for illegal drugs, and now everything's 10 times more expensive. Great, let's bring it on. Just do it. It's not. They need to leave it alone completely, or they need to go batshit insane and completely make it all illegal. The worst thing is this permissioned cucked Bitcoin. That's and that's where you're heading, because it's cheaper and it's easier. I can use on-chain Bitcoin, and then I've got that was at one time I did a DCA and I had 45 UTXOs, and then I went to spend it, and it was a high fee environment, and I wasted half of my stacking in an on-chain transaction. I don't understand what I'm doing. I need an exchange to do this for me. And don't worry, I just have to make an account with these guys, and I upload a picture of my driver's license and today's date and smile or not smile, whatever the requirement is. It's yeah, great. This is gold again. This is just, there's a reason we don't that we're saying this is gold 2.0. There's a reason for that. We know that if we went back to the gold standard, because the fiat standard sucks, we know it will just end up as fiat again. There's a way that happens to Bitcoin too, and it's happening. And I hate watching it, because it's such a disappointment. It's such a betrayal of all the principles that created this project. And it's it's always going to not be as good as it was with 1,000 cypherpunks. It was always going to be a bit worse, but it's just tanking at such a fast rate. And I just don't know of any other method than hostile politicians that make life really difficult for Bitcoiners, who are then forced to go and become coin join coordinators and UTXO experts and all this.
Okay, we need to bring the optimism back here. I feel so yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. But there's enough of this. That. I don't feel that's my function.
You need to. The night is darkest just before the dawn and all of that. So we still. I still have hopes we'll win. I'm pretty sure we will. One way or another. This stuff like this helps. People are forced to listen to these perspectives and do something about it. I think that's great. One one point I wanted to make before, like, to take this in a slightly different direction, because I think people have gotten the point here.
Yeah, I'm sorry about all this.
No,
Like,
it's nice.
Don't sell your... Everyone messages me after I do this and say, hey, should I sell? I'm like, no, obviously don't sell your Bitcoin.
Yeah.
There's still nothing else remotely as good.
No,
So please don't take that from what I'm saying.
I like metal music. I like darkness.
All right.
So the other point we wanted to touch on is like, why the fuck are you guys mining empty blocks?
Oh, that's fun. Because it's better than mining no blocks.
All right, and why is that?
Well, because if you mine no blocks, you don't even make the subsidy. Not to give a Luke Jr. style unelaborated answer, but that's it. Like, people don't understand, and like intuitively they go, there could have been transactions in that. I'm like, that's not how it works. Like, I've seen people that run mining pools not understand this, and this is the kind of part where I'm like, I'm gonna start drinking again or something. It's just so depressing that people that run like critical infrastructure in Bitcoin don't get this stuff. Like Poisson distribution, like, an empty block is not a block that could have been a full block. There just wouldn't have been a block. And empty blocks are not useless. Because if you open a Lightning channel, by default, you're waiting 3 blocks or 6 blocks after. It gets in a block. You still can't use the channel. It needs to be in. Every block gets confirmed by the block after it. So if you find an empty block, it confirms everything. It's more work for an attacker to do to reorg the chain because there's yet more work they have to replace. Resource-wise, they're fantastic, obviously, because they contain no data. So like for a node, they're the least annoying thing ever. Obviously, you don't want loads of blocks to be empty because, that effectively makes there be less block size space. Well, I mean, to be honest, that's probably not a bad thing either, but someone's going to cut this out of context. The only reason like empty blocks exist is because you don't want miners doing useless work, and sending a block template full of transactions instead of an empty block means the nature of that taking longer to get to a bunch of ASICs means that they spend longer doing useless work. So it's called the empty block speed up. Like, the network just found a new block. As of this instant, all of the miners on my pool are now doing useless work trying to find a block that already got found, or a competing block for that one. I need to get them on new work immediately, and the only way I can get it could be a tiny amount of data in the difference, but like, I'm not sending one chunk of data down one pipeline. I've got 10,000 ASICs connected to me. Every byte matters here. So, there's packet size. You do have like these notches, but people don't run the proxies that everyone thinks they do. So, and miners like to mine in stranded energy scenarios where the internet is not great, and they have hundreds or thousands of miners all pointed at a pool, and I have to send a tiny bit of data to 10,000 things over crap internet. Yes, I need to save every single byte possible. Because if I just don't do the empty block and I do the full block, it might take another 300 milliseconds, or like sometimes multiple seconds. And in a 10-minute race, multiple seconds add up. And you can make miners do useless work for collective tens of hours every month by not doing the empty block speed up. And they don't hurt anything. They might become not worth it when subsidy is so low and transaction fees are so high that eventually empty blocks are just not worth it as a speed up. But by then, all these big miners should be running proper proxy software anyway. If there's a Stratum proxy on the local site for the farm, then you only need to send the slightly larger amount of data to one thing, and then it deals with it all locally. That's fine. Then you don't need to worry about the empty block speed up, but a lot of big miners just don't do that.
Okay, I've heard you talk about this on other podcasts. We talked about the backdoor in the Bitmain miners before.
Oh yeah, this is fun.
But you've also talked about on other pods about Bitmain deliberately making the miners mine empty blocks for a longer time than necessary.
It's conjecture, right? And I believe I wasn't over the top in this expose I wrote that like blew up. It's anyone else, I'd give them the benefit of the doubt, but because it's Bitmain, I'm like, yeah, it's probably malicious. Like, so this all kicked off because the understanding in the entire Bitcoin space amongst even core devs like Matt Corallo is wrong. They don't understand why empty blocks actually happen. And it turns into debate around why pools do the speed up, but not about why we manifestly actually see so many get found. Because Ocean's last block, we send out the empty template. This is after we've verified the prior block, by the way. So the explanation is that's in the zeitgeist of Bitcoin is completely wrong. It's people, they are saying that a pool, when it gets a block from another pool, before it verifies that it's a valid block, sends out new work to its miners. And then once it's verified that the block is valid, it updates, presumably. But I mean, or if it somehow discovers that it's not valid, it then sends another update and says, "Oh, stop doing that work because you're building on an invalid block." This is not how any pool operates because it's suicide. You don't build you could destroy a pool in 10 minutes like that. If I send to Foundry invalid blocks all the time and it keeps sending out work based on that, it's going to keep making its miners do useless work. And given how long it takes for miners to get old work out of their system, that's suicide. Like you can have an ant miner will work for a minute sometimes. At like worst case scenario, it will be working for a whole minute on old work. Right, so it would be suicide. So that's not what happens. In Ocean's case, and in any sensible mining pool's case, and in all the pools we've tested, when they send the empty block, they have already verified the last block, and they already have most of the way there, the full block as well. Like they can essentially send both of these things because they're both ready at the same time, but they still choose to send the empty template because it will just get there faster. And then they immediately, or basically at the same time, follow up with the full template. But the problem is, some chips on the miner are now working on the empty template, and they don't just switch to the full template when they get it. So here's how the time frame of it breaks down. And this, unfortunately, I'm not doing a great explanation here, but hopefully I'll clear it up. So you have the pool has found a new network block. It's verified that it's real. It immediately sends an empty template based on that. It's not empty because it didn't want to put transactions in there that might have been in the block it didn't verify before and thus mine an invalid block. It's none of that. It already knows all that information. It already made sure that this is valid before it built on it. It just wants to take advantage of the fact that the empty template will get there faster. Once it's done that, the ant miner at the other end is still, it's going to get a clean jobs equals true. So you put true at the end of the Stratum message, and that makes it dump the previous work. And this is really expensive. The hash rate of the pool at that instant will completely tank. All the ant miners on the pool will just what's going on for a little minute.
It's doing something else than guessing a number.
It's very expensive, and it's hard on the hardware too. Like you don't want to keep doing that to hardware. The clean jobs true is like a very expensive thing for a pool to do, and then within a couple 100 milliseconds, which is tens of % of a whole second, it starts to get itself back together and start working on the empty template. Then you send the full template without clean jobs true, because true is really expensive. And the overall effect of it, again, this is all misunderstood. It's really hard because I'm not explaining a thing no one knows about. I'm explaining a thing everyone has a wrong understanding of. Which is like really hard. It's like explaining Bitcoin to people that don't, like it for some bullshit they heard in the news. So the full template comes along and it comes with clean false, because we're not doing that whole thing where we nuke the ant miner for a second and it struggles to find itself. We say, all right, when it's convenient for you, switch over to this full template. And Watts miners and reasonably designed miners within a few seconds will switch over completely. But ant miners, we were finding, it just takes them a really long time if you don't send clean jobs true to actually get this old template out of their system. But the important point to realize is that the pool has long since sent you an update for your work. It contains transactions, but you're still working on the empty template. So this was the criticism. When a pool finds an empty block, everyone goes, why hadn't the pool sent a full template yet? And we were saying, we had. This empty block happened 5 seconds after we'd already sent out a full template. It's just the miner wasn't working on it yet because they're not designed all that well. They don't switch jobs that quickly. And we don't want to run this expensive command that makes them just do nothing for a little while because it's a waste of the miner's effort. It causes wear and tear on the hardware. And if it mines an empty block, it's not that bad. They could have made 10% more if it was a full block. But remember, the alternative to an empty block is not a full block, it's no block. So it's entirely rational thing to do.
I think you said like this was deliberate from Bitmain's side. That they made it.
So to get into the controversy of it, right? We were like, so Watts miners do a complete job change in max 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And Ant miners the majority of the chips would have switched in 3 seconds. But depending on where in the cycle it is of grinding through whatever it's doing to, I don't know where the ASIC boost part lies in the circuitry or the like just legitimately grinding nonce values. Depending on where it is in that process, one of the chips could just be still working on the empty template 30 seconds after you've already sent it a full template, and you've probably followed up with even more full templates because pools keep updating, right, as new transactions show up. And they just were doing old work for ages. And it makes pools look bad because it makes it look like we're just slow to generate work when we're not. But the point is, they released a firm, like, we started explaining as Ocean why empty blocks happen, because everyone thought, oh, it's just the pool is like being slow. Like they sent an empty template and then they sent a full template, but before they could do the full template for whatever reason, someone found an empty block. And we're like, no, in nearly all cases, everyone that found an empty block had full work. It just wasn't doing it yet. That's not the pool's fault. That's the hardware's fault. And the minute this entered the fray, and we kept hammering home about it because we got blessed, if you want to look at it that way, with 3 empty blocks, which is statistically impossible, like not impossible, but very unlikely. In all cases, it was not the fault of Ocean because there was, in all 3 cases, the miners long since had full work to be working on. So everyone looked at Ocean and went, oh, it's because you filter spam, so it takes longer for you to verify incoming blocks. And no, of course, that's not how it works. We run a core node which is as aware of as many transactions as possible. Spam doesn't make us slower to verify blocks than other pools who don't filter spam. Doesn't work like that. Any pool that gets a block from Mara pool has to deal with a whole bunch of unfamiliar transactions, and yes, it takes longer, right? That's just part of mining, right? If you're the biggest pool, you don't need to do this verification because you're building on top of your own block so often. So this is one of the reasons we don't want big blocks, right? Because if you're the one that keeps finding the majority of the blocks, everyone else has to spend like 8 seconds downloading it and verifying everything in it. You get a head start. So I'm digressing. The point was, you have ant miners doing this very slow process of updating. And then when we made all this noise about it and we started correcting the narrative around why empty blocks happen, and it's because ant miners suck, surprise, surprise, yet another thing about them that's badly designed, they released a firmware update for it, and we were like, wait, this isn't a hardware thing. This is a firmware thing that they have a fix for that they're releasing now. This is very suspicious, because what if they've been using this the whole time? That would be a huge advantage. They're going to be doing more. The more up-to-date your work is, the more lucrative it is, especially in a high transaction fee environment. If someone fat fingers a transaction fee and every other pool adds it to their template, but it takes 30 seconds for them all to start updating, it's not going to be that long. But if,
but you make more money than the other pools,
right.
so you get a market advantage.
The point is you're mining on better hardware than your competition, and you're selling all of the hardware,
so
right?
Do you suspect them to be doing more like suspicious stuff? Is it just the backdoor and the empty block thing? Could there be other attack vectors from the hardware manufacturers?
I mean, it's all closed source, and this is an adversarial environment, so I'm never going to say, I mean, it's possible, and the likelihood is sort of irrelevant, really. Like, would we run Bitcoin Core if it was closed source and binary only, and just be like, well, do we think Peter Wuller and, these people are malicious? Like, it's just a silly conversation at that point. I'm like, no, of course I don't trust Bitmain, right? Like, I mean, but I don't know. They're also, like, one thing I said in that expose thing that I'm probably wrong about, that I would love to correct publicly, is the covert ASIC boost allegation. Because I took Greg Maxwell and what he said at face value, which is they're definitely using it. And it depends who you listen to here, but it looks like they intended to use covert ASIC boost and couldn't actually figure it out because it's really complicated. The hardware was totally designed for it, and they couldn't actually do it at the software level, and then they never did it, and then everyone hated them for probably doing it, even though they probably actually never managed it. So it's like they had,
but they had the intention.
Yeah, they certainly had the intention, and I'm pretty sure it was a factor in why they wanted, like, pushing for SegWit as a hard fork instead of a soft fork is like completely illogical. It breaks up the community. It resets everyone's trust in what the network is. Like, Ethereum is like forever undermined by what they did with Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. That's a blight on that thing they will never recover from. And like trying to get Bitcoin to have that same compromise for no reason. Like, the only reason it made sense was to be able to maintain covert AC boost. So I just assumed that they did it. And that was a part of my rationale for assuming bad faith with this firmware release. So again, though, I want to reiterate, that post was conjecture. I don't have proof. I don't know what would constitute proof. Someone can decompile the firmware update and look if there's some sort of smoking gun date in it. If they had that update like a year ago and they only released it after all the noise around empty blocks, that would be a pretty good smoking gun. But again, I'm not a mind reader. It could just be a coincidence, but I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, it's possible that my hunch is wrong.
Benefit of the cloud.
And all the and you said that it was statistically really unlikely, but that's actually true, right? There wasn't any reason for Ocean to have mined those 3 empty blocks.
Well, in all cases, as I said, the full template was already pushed out. So everyone, like, the reason it could be the pool's fault that there's an empty block is that it sent out an empty template and then it couldn't figure out the full template, or it just took too long to put it together. And like, it might take us 10 seconds to put together a full template, and someone found a block after only 5 seconds. Then you can go, this pool sucks. Like, what are they doing? Why aren't they caching enough transactions to be able to verify blocks really quickly? Like, why aren't they running sufficient infrastructure? The minute the empty block happens after you've already issued the full template, then it's the miner on the other side. Maybe they have a network issue or something. Like, I've seen empty blocks happen 6 minutes after the last block. That can happen because there's just like a transient network issue or something. Like, one miner didn't get an updated template. It can happen because the pool had a node go down, goes back up, and it lost its mempool for some reason, and then it sent another empty template. There are a whole bunch of reasons. But I'm just saying, all 3 of the empty blocks Ocean found, in all 3 cases, we'd long since sent out a full template. So it wasn't poolside that there was an issue. It's not like we have a bad networking thing or something like that. It's easy and intuitive to blame the pool, and it can be the pool's fault. In our case, it wasn't, not in any instance.
I just wanted to reiterate that, and maybe it's time to take this towards a soft landing because we've already been going for a while. And yeah. But okay, so why does Ocean filter this spam stuff? At least give the option in the templates. Mm-hmm. And why should miners consider mining with Ocean?
Not every miner wants to participate in the ongoing attack, and they need an option to be able to do that. And Ocean is the only option to do that apart from solo mining. So no other pool has taken it upon themselves to do this.
I heard about some other pool, like when this Dubai thing was happening, there was talk about another pool doing a similar thing. I don't remember the name of the pool, but like, but that would be
amazing.
Welcome. Yeah,
I would love to.
Yeah.
I'm not. Competition's competition, but like, if someone else would actually step up and do it, I would be very happy. I'm doing what I do at Ocean because I think Bitcoin needs it, not because it's like, I like having a job and an income and all that stuff, but like, it is genuinely not the primary motivation. Before I worked at Start9 or Ocean, I just had no job. Like, I'm only going to do something if it compels me. Like, I'm not going to go and work at like, some shitcoin exchange just to earn more sats. Like, it's not necessary for me. I don't want to do it. Yeah, so why do you want to mine with Ocean? Because you don't want to actively attack the network, which is what everyone's doing by default at the moment. If you want elaboration on what the nature of the attack is, that's a whole podcast in itself, right? Like, we have spam filters in Bitcoin. We've had them forever. It's never been censorship. They don't work at the moment. Ocean fixed them. So now it's just what it always was. The unwillingness to fix these things comes from ignorance or confusion or, just gaslighting from spammers and David Bailey and all these fucking assholes. So it's like, it's just like, that's all it is. And the context of it beautifully, as it always is with Bitcoin, if you're like principled and awesome as a person, you make more money than shitcoiners and scammers. They actually end up doing worse. So in the context of how mining works at the moment, Ocean is way more lucrative for miners, which is really weird. There are some caveats to that. But here's like the sort of the the amazing layout of it. So Ocean found 3 empty blocks. At least 10% of what you could have got in a full block is gone because the transaction fees aren't there. We missed out. We had incredibly bad luck during December 2023 and the halving. We didn't find a single block during those 2 historically the highest fee environments in Bitcoin's history. We didn't find a single block in those periods. Our luck at the moment is way below 100%. Despite all of these things, Ocean miners have come out way ahead of what they were paid in competing pools. With Bob Burnett run his analysis, he had 10 machines pointed at Ocean, 10 machines pointed at FPPS Pool 1, who will remain nameless, FPPS Pool 2, and FPPS Pool 3. Not going to name names, but well-known, respected pools that everyone is using, despite Ocean having, and spam filtering, right? So there's going to be a transaction or two out there that is just a shit ton of fake tap script or whatever, and it pays a whole high transaction fee, and it doesn't end up in Ocean's default template. Despite all of these factors, Ocean miners came out above. So that fact, like, we were shocked by that because I knew there was some fuckery afoot, but I didn't think it was going to be anything like as significant as that.
So, like we've said before, in conclusion, like if you're a miner, be a miner, don't be a hash salesman.
Yeah.
And point your miners to Ocean and do the thing so you can see what's going on. Otherwise, you're probably getting fucked. Like, yeah.
Yeah, you are. Like, I mean, there's a massive disadvantage to Ocean temporarily, which is that we have very low hash rate, which means our variance is awful. We'll go for weeks without blocks. And that's impossible for some people to deal with. And I sympathize with any miner that is like, oh, I get it. I'm even ideologically aligned with you guys. I can't be 2 weeks late to pay my electricity bill. This won't be a problem if we grow, but it's a chicken and egg problem. And it's dismaying because it's very hard. Like, you've got to reach escape velocity as a pool. We almost did, and then we didn't because, it just didn't take off the way it might have done. And so now we're grinding out there trying to get that bootstrapping problem finally solved. We're nowhere near a year in, so it's not been long. And,
But the solution is that everyone who can't afford it pretends that they afford it and just does it anyway and thus connects to Ocean and thus you get the hashing power, right?
Yeah, like if everyone made an irrational choice, it would become rational. That's it's chicken and egg.
It's
it
like
really
playing Prisoner's Dilemma over and over again. Because if you play it one time, you're supposed to defect, and if you play it over and over again, you're supposed to cooperate.
Read our upcoming book for an explanation of the prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Anyway, go to Ocean XYZ to see what you're doing. Anywhere else you want to send our listeners?
I guess Twitter, but I mean, I'm not going to read an NPub out on here. Like, Noster is great. Like, I'm starting to become a Noster maxi.
Yeah, so are we. We're like hyper-nostrified.
It's really
hyper-nostrified or whatever. So,
That's awkward.
And if you haven't seen them, check out Mechanic's other interviews. An excellent one with McCormack a couple of weeks ago.
Couple of months ago. Absolutely fantastic interview.
Yeah.
Props to that.
That was
thank you. That was a fun one.
So so was this one. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah,
always a pleasure, man.
Back to the conference.
And don't sell your Bitcoin. It's fine. It's gonna be fine.
This has been the Freedom Footprint Show. Thanks for listening. Thanks again, Mr. Mechanic.